nationally renowned watercolor artist Alan Shuptrine of Lookout Mountain, Georgia.
And something that's always been very, very special to me is the dogwood tree. I grew up in Highlands, North Carolina, where the dogwoods were just everywhere. I thought that, just the title renewal, would carry forth the message that Greg Vidal has been, from the day one has been trying to say, and that is that we're rebuilding, and we're expanding, we're growing, and we're alive, and we're moving forward. And so, with that in mind, I just thought that would be the perfect title, and nothing could say it better than the dogwood.
Alan first started out with a square charcoal drawing of the 5 dogwood flowers that he envisioned. He then set up his large 40 by 40 blank white canvas, his largest dogwood to date. Working in his home studio with this amazing view of Lookout Mountain, he spent hundreds of hours bringing his dogwood flower vision to life.
But I love the challenge of watercolor. It's a beautiful and fresh medium, and once you learn how to control it, there's really nothing quite like it. It's you have to think in reverse from painting in oil. In oil and acrylic, you actually get white paint, but in watercolor you have to save your whites, because the white that you have in the painting is the paper, or in this particular case, it's the pure cotton rag. It's not really paper, it's cloth. Drew all the shapes in, and then I had to protect my white blossoms because I didn't want to get any of that beautiful dark background paint into the white, because once you get paint into the white paper, a lot of times you can't lift all of it out, and so it's never quite the same. So I protected all of my blossoms with latex mask.
Alan's process is actually a lot like painting in oil. Thanks to 3 techniques he learned from his artist father, each adds to the final piece. The first is wet on wet.
And that's where you wet the paper and you put pigment into that wetness and just let it swim everywhere. And I use a lot of wet and wet, particularly for my backgrounds, because I want my backgrounds to be very soft and out of focus. And the next technique that I use in the process is wet on dry. And that basically is where I take a wet wash of watercolor in my brush and paint it onto dry paper, and I get very sharp, crisp lines with that technique. And then the third technique I use is called dry brush, and that essentially is where you take a lot of paint and put it in your brush, very little water, and using the texture of the paper and many hundreds of thousands of crisscross strokes and light touch across the mountaintops of the paper, you're able to actually add pigment. It's a slower process, but it's my favorite. It's my favorite process to finally get to, because once the sweat equity of the painting has been achieved, then you can actually add the texture and the detail with dry brush. So I literally laid in all of that background and danced around the branches and the lichen, the craggy lichen and so forth of the painting first. And then I worked on the branches, the stems, the leaves, and the blossoms. And then the very, very last thing that I worked on is the center stamen heads of each blossom. I wanted to engage the viewer, so I've tried to essentially trap the viewer inside there, and I hope that the viewer spends a long time really studying the branches and all the little intricacies and go deep into the painting. Because everything in the painting is set up purposefully. There's something so special about the dogwood because you have these beautiful, delicate blossoms, and they're generally juxtaposed to this very, very rough and craggy, lichen-colored, twisted branches. This particular piece, has light in the upper left-hand corner and deep shadows where the light is casting, and so there's just this feeling of peace and solitude and reverence about this piece, and that's really what I was trying to translate, and so I hope that other people dial into that and they can feel it as well. Well, it's just such an honor, first of all, to be in the collection of Morning Pointe. I hope that all of the Morning Pointe locations really enjoy this painting for years to come.
Renewal, a special dogwood flower on display in Morning Pointe communities across the Southeast for all to enjoy for generations to come.